Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadows of a much darker world, a place of candle-lit corridors, whispered names, and knives you never see coming until it's far too late. You've just woken up as a medieval assassin, and no, it's not as cool as it sounds. There are no cloaks that make you invisible, no rooftop hay bales to break your fall, and definitely no one writing love songs about you in the tavern. You live in the silence, in the filth, in the kind of danger that smells like iron and regret. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. I love reading those. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in a room you don't remember falling asleep in. Your breath is shallow, your left leg's asleep. There's something sticky on your right hand. Blood. You blink a few times. No panic. Not anymore. Not for this. The room is small, bare. A single wooden stool beside a tiny shuttered window. The light is dull, early morning seeping through cracked glass. The walls are stone, moist, with a smell that clings to your skin. You sit up slowly. Every muscle groans like timber under strain. Your dagger lies beside you, wrapped in cloth. Still sheathed, still cold. You unwrap it. The edge is dull again. You make a note to fix that if you can find time, or a whetstone that doesn't cost more than your last job paid. The parchment is folded under your boots. You recognize the seal before you even unfold it. A red wax mark. 2 blades crossed in a circle. The guild's symbol, or what's left of the guild anyway. You break the seal. No greeting, just a name. Ink blotched, written quickly. Below it, a place. And a single word. Deliver. You know what it means. You've known for a while. The jobs don't come with explanations. No politics, no debates. You receive a name. You cross it off. The bed, if you can call it that, is just a stack of burlap and straw. It itches. You doubt you'll sleep there again. You splash water on your face from a basin near the door. It's cold. It smells like tin. You drink a little anyway. Your stomach growls in response, rude, but not unexpected. You haven't eaten since yesterday, maybe the day before. You strap the blade to your hip. Adjust your belt. Flex your fingers. Time to work. You push the door open. It creaks like a traitor. Outside is a narrow alley, walled in by crumbling buildings that lean like old men too proud to sit down. Mist coils at your ankles. A rat scurries past, too fat to fear you. You pull up your hood. It's not for disguise. Everyone knows your face. But somehow, the cloth helps you believe they don't. The city stirs ahead of you, slowly, like a hungover lion. Market stalls creak open. Smoke curls from chimney tops. A woman argues with a fishmonger. A dog barks once and then thinks better of it. You move quietly. Your footsteps don't echo anymore. They used to, before you learned to land like dust. You pass a guard. He doesn't look at you. You could be anyone. That's the point. The tavern door is already ajar. You glance inside, not looking for anything, just checking. You never stop checking. A man slumps at a table near the fire, mug in hand, sleep in his eyes. You know that kind of sleep, the kind you have to borrow, the kind that doesn't belong to you. You move on. The parchment in your pocket burns like guilt. You don't know the person on it. Not yet. But by sunset, you will. And by sunrise, they probably won't be breathing. You cross the threshold into the wider street. Horses pass. A merchant shouts. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls 5 slow times. You count your steps. 16 to the next alley. 3 more to the bakery. The air smells of yeast and ash. Your stomach twists. You keep walking. You are the ghost in the daylight, the shadow in the stairwell, the stranger who was never there. And today, you have work to do. You're in the city before most of it's truly awake. Not because it's safer that way, though it is, but because you never really sleep anymore. Not properly. Not without waking in a sweat, hands curled into fists, ready to strike or run. These early hours, just before the baker's boy starts shouting and the beggars begin their chants, are the only time the streets feel yours. You move along the back wall of a tannery. The air is thick with rot and chemicals. You breathe through your mouth and keep your hood low. The paving stones beneath your boots are slick, not with rain, but with something more organic. You don't ask questions in this part of town. There's a hole in the wall up ahead, a break in the stone near the edge of a crumbling chapel. You squeeze through sideways, shoulder-scraping moss. On the other side, a shortcut, a hidden lane that cuts through 4 city blocks in half the time. Only thieves, rats, and people like you know about it. You slip down it now, moving silent. You pass 2 children curled in a doorway, eyes open but unfocused. They don't flinch. You don't speak. This is your territory. Not the place where laws are written or enforced, but the cracks in between, where shadows live, where names are passed like secrets, where dying is just something people do before breakfast. Your target today, let's call him that for now, lives on the north side. Or, so the parchment says, you haven't seen him yet, haven't studied his gait or learned the pitch of his voice. That comes later. For now, it's just a name and a direction. North. The city stretches wide around you, pulsing with slow, sleepy life. Stone buildings lean toward the sky like they're begging for forgiveness. Every corner tells a story. Blood on this wall, an echo of a scream down that one. You've walked it all. Felt the uneven cobbles beneath your soles. Memorized every creaking shutter, every hand signal from every vendor. There's a man who sells eggs just outside the barracks. He always nods once when guards are near. You pass him now. He doesn't nod. Good. Further ahead you spot a group of watchmen, 3 of them, laughing. One rests a hand on his sword hilt. You turn down a side street before they see you. You're not wanted, at least not today, but your face has been noticed in places it shouldn't be. Best to avoid the chance. Historians like to romanticize cities like this, bustling trade centers, beacons of medieval growth and ingenuity. But they don't mention the stench, the sewage, the layers of humanity stacked atop one another like bad meat in a market stall. They forget the desperation clinging to every windowsill. You don't. You've used it. You pass a door marked with a red X. Plague. Old, maybe. Maybe not. You hold your breath. Your boots slap puddles without sound. You've trained them to do that. You trained yourself. No one taught you how to walk like fog. You learned by needing to leave places without being followed. Up ahead, a church bell rings. You freeze. Not from fear. From timing. The bell always rings when the sacristy opens. The sacristy faces the north ward. You're getting close. You slip into a side alley, scale a half-collapsed stack of barrels, and pull yourself onto a low rooftop. The shingles are wet, some cracked. Your fingers find familiar grooves as you crawl across the slope. The city looks different from here. Less cruel, still dirty, but almost calm. You hate that you like this view. You watch for movement in the square below. A cart passes. A dog limps past. Then there, a man steps out of a doorway, adjusting his coat. His stride is deliberate, confident. You don't know him yet, but the parchment in your pocket does. You watch him disappear down a side road. You don't follow, not yet. You'll wait, watch, learn the rhythm of his day, find the soft places in his routine. Because that's the job. It's not glory, it's not heroism. It's patience and shadows, and waking before the world realizes you were ever there. Your clothes smell like old rain, smoke, and the kind of sweat that doesn't wash out anymore. You wish that was an exaggeration. It's not. You dress in layers, always. A base tunic, coarse wool, roughly stitched. Over that, a vest of boiled leather with faded seams and a pocket where the lining gave up long ago. Your cloak, patchwork, blackened at the hem, stiff where it soaked up blood you never quite got out. It hangs unevenly over your shoulders. That's on purpose. One side longer, weighted, so it flares correctly when you turn, so it hides the knife you never want to use but always have. The hood is the best part. Deep, shadowed. It doesn't make you invisible, but it makes people think twice before calling out. Sometimes that's all you need. Your boots are worse. Cracked at the toe. Sole nearly worn through on the right. But they're quiet. You've trained them to be. Every scrape and shuffle retrained over months, no, years, until you could walk across wet wood without a sound. Still, they leak. And when it rains, which it always does, you feel every drop. Today is no exception. The sky's been dripping all morning, slow and steady like it's trying to lull you into forgetting the wetness. But your boots remember. Your tunic drinks it up like a sponge. By now, your left sleeve is soaked, the armpit stiff with chafed wool. You want to strip it off. You don't. The layers matter. So does the look, because appearances are part of the job. Not just vanishing, but blending. Some assassins prefer elegance, tight black, soft gloves, polished buckles. You don't have time for that. You wear what works, what fits, what smells enough like everyone else that no one looks twice. Today, that means grime. Grease in your hair. A smudge across your cheek. A bit of someone else's bread still caught in the corner of your cloak. You used to care. Now, you barely notice. What you do notice is that your belt is too loose. You lost weight again. From stress. From skipping meals. From the kind of living that doesn't give your stomach time to settle before it's time to run. You cinch the buckle tighter. Your dagger hangs at your hip, hidden under cloth. The sheath is worn to the grain. The hilt smooth from use. The weight familiar, like a bad memory in your hand. And then there's the pouch. Soft leather, tied tight. Heavy with coin you don't remember earning. That's always a little alarming. You check it. A few silver, 1 copper. 2 unfamiliar coins that might be counterfeit or foreign. You can't tell. The real treasure is the wax-stamped slip tucked at the bottom. a different job, a different name. You tie the pouch shut. Historians love to describe medieval garments, rich velvet, gold-threaded surcoats, brocade trim. That's for kings. You live in the kind of clothes that never make it into records, because no one writes about people like you unless you make them. And if you've done your job right, they never see you coming. You duck into a doorway to wring out your sleeve. Water streams onto the cobblestones. A boy passes with a bucket, looks at you once, then away. You're just another figure in the drizzle, exactly right. You step back out and keep walking. You're cold, you're wet. But no one's looking at you, which means, for today at least, you're doing something right. No one ever taught you how to do this. There wasn't a school. No parchment rolled out with neat diagrams. No teacher with spectacles and a long stick. Just hunger and fear, and someone saying, "Get it done," before vanishing into the dark. You weren't trained. You were picked. Plucked from the corner of a crowded market, maybe. Or found scraping a blade across a rotting apple somewhere behind the fishmonger's stall. Someone saw something, or thought they did. And that was that. The first job was a test. You weren't told it was a test. You were just handed a note and a coin, and told to deliver something to someone who didn't know they were being delivered to. You failed, but not completely. You lived. And in this business, that counts. The man was a priest, or at least wore a robe like one. You remember sneaking into the sacristy, palms slick, heart banging like a smith's hammer. You hid behind a tapestry, waited for him to kneel, then ran at him like a startled cat and nearly stabbed your own foot instead. The blade slipped. His robes caught. He screamed like something primal. You ran. You bled. You wept. But you remembered every second. And the next time, you were better. Still sloppy, but better. That's how it goes. No one teaches you how to spot a guard before he speaks. You learn by getting dragged from an alley by the ear and thrown into a cellar full of broken tools. No one teaches you which poisons stain the fingers and which pass clean. You learn by watching someone else vomit until they stop breathing. No one tells you what to do when your target cries. That one you still haven't figured out. You're supposed to stay detached, professional, cold. You try. But you weren't raised for this. You weren't raised for anything. You made yourself in pieces, one mistake at a time. People like to imagine assassins as elegant, quiet, purposeful. What they forget is that you were once a child with nothing, and now you're just that child, wearing more layers and carrying a knife. You think of the others sometimes. The ones who didn't make it through the first job. The girl with the twitch. The boy with the limp. The quiet one who asked too many questions. No one says their names anymore. Except you. Sometimes, quietly. You walk past a wall marked with chalk. 2 circles and a cross. The guild's old signal for danger here. You run your fingers across it. The mark is faded. Someone tried to scrub it clean. You remember the first time you saw that symbol. You were told to run if you saw it. Not fight, not hide. Run. You didn't. And that's why you're still breathing. You round a corner and spot a guard leaning against a doorway. His helmet is crooked, his eyes bored. You nod once, casual, forgettable. He doesn't look twice. That's a skill no one taught you. You just learned to disappear before anyone noticed you were there. Your dagger is dull, again. You press your thumb to the edge and feel nothing. No bite, no warning. Just a rounded ridge that might as well be a butter knife. You sigh. You should have sharpened it last night, or the night before. But by the time the fire was low and your back stopped screaming, you couldn't bring yourself to do more than curl up on the straw pile and hope you didn't wake up to a boot in your ribs. You draw the blade anyway. It catches a little in the sheath, too dry. The leather is worn and cracked like everything else you own. You tug the blade free, squint at the edge in the morning light. There's a nick halfway down the spine. You don't even remember what caused it. Could have been the last job. Could have been the trapdoor hinge you jammed it into when fleeing that widow who turned out to have 6 guards and an axe. Either way, it needs fixing. You crouch in the alley beside a pile of firewood. Lay the blade across your knee and pull out your whetstone. Except you don't have one anymore. Right. You traded it for moldy bread 2 nights ago. Brilliant. You glance around. The street's quiet. A child is playing with a stick. A stray dog gnaws at something unidentifiable. You scan the ground. There, a bit of brick. You pick it up, spit on it, and drag the blade across it slowly. Shark. It's not ideal. It's barely even effective. But it's something. You work at it for 10 minutes. 15. The edge starts to respond, slightly. It gleams dully. Still not sharp enough to shave with, but enough to cut a throat. You test it on a strip of leather. It bites. Not clean, but deep enough. You nod. Done. Historians talk about weapons as if they're symbols. The sword of this knight, the axe of that king. But yours isn't a symbol. It's a tool, and a failing one at that. You've had 3 blades in the last year. 1 snapped. 1 was taken. This one just refuses to die. Like you. You tuck it back into the sheath. Your fingers ache from gripping it. You flex them. The joints pop. You glance up. The child with the stick is watching you. You raise an eyebrow. He looks away. Good. You head toward the square. Still time to catch your mark before he disappears behind a gate or into a brothel. You move like you're part of the stone. Like you belong here. Because you do. You've walked these streets in every season, every light, with every kind of blood on your hands. And you've done it all with a blade that never quite cuts the way you want it to. You remind yourself, it's not about sharpness. It's about timing, about placement, about not needing to use it at all, if you can help it. You walk past a mirror in a vendor's stall, cracked, grimy, warped. You catch your reflection, hood low, eyes tired, blade hidden. You look exactly like what you are. Someone no one notices until it's too late. You move on. One more job. One more edge. One more day. You remember your first kill like you remember a fever. Not clearly, not in order, but in flashes, hot, too bright, and entirely too loud. You didn't plan to do it that night. You were still just watching, following the mark through alleyways and over slippery rooftops, memorizing his steps, the way he scratched behind his ear when he paused to urinate, the way he always bought a hot turnip pie from the same cart just before sundown. You weren't supposed to touch him yet. You hadn't been told how. There was no timing given, No backup, no exit route. But something changed. He spotted you. You don't know how. You were careful. You always were. But suddenly he turned, squinted, and started walking faster. Then faster still. You followed. You had to. Then he ran, and something in you, fear, pride, instinct, made you run after. You chased him down the wine alley, past the fish stall that always smelled like regret, over the cart full of rotten cabbages. And when he slipped, you were already there. You don't remember drawing the knife. You just remember the sound. The blade sank deeper than you thought it would. He gasped. You gasped. There was no poetry, no silence, no whispered apology. Just blood. A lot of it. Hot and sudden. On your hands, on your chest, in your mouth. He clutched at you. Like a drowning man, you let him fall. He died, staring. You stared back. Then you ran. You made it 3 streets away before your legs gave out. You vomited behind a barrel, sat in the mud, shaking, shivering, your blade sticky, your cloak ruined. You cried, quietly. Loud crying attracts questions. When you returned to the guild hideout that night, you said nothing. You just put the folded parchment on the table. The guildmaster didn't say thank you, just handed you another slip of paper. Another name. That was it. You didn't sleep. The next morning, your hands still smelled like iron. They would for days. You scrubbed them until they bled. But it didn't matter, because the job was done. And that meant you could eat again. Historians ask how assassins trained, what rituals they used, what they believed. They forget to ask what it does to someone the first time they take a life. They forget that it's not a ceremony. It's a mess. It's a panic. It's someone else's last breath soaked into your sleeve. You never wore that tunic again, even after you washed it. Even after the blood stopped showing. Because every time you touched it, you remembered the weight of his body sliding down your chest. He was the first, not the last. But you still think about him sometimes. Usually just before sleep. Usually just after waking. You wonder what his name really was. You wonder if anyone missed him. You wonder what would have happened if he hadn't run. You wonder what you would be if he hadn't looked back. You're hungry. Again, you're always hungry. It's the kind of hunger that doesn't snarl anymore, just hums. Low, steady, like a slow leak in a pipe. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Bread, stew, anything. But food costs coin. And your last job paid in promises. You chew a bit of stale oatcake from your pouch. It tastes like sawdust and regret. You swallow hard, drink from your water skin, and pretend you don't hear your stomach complaining. Some jobs feed you, but not many. A noble might offer a meal before sending you to kill his brother. A merchant might throw you a coin and point to the back alley like you're a dog to be loosed. Most of the time, you feed yourself. Scraps from market stalls, crusts left on tavern tables, apples pilfered from a distracted child. You're not above it. Today, you trade information for soup. You sit beside a blind man outside the cathedral and whisper the name of a ship captain who disappeared last week. The blind man nods, then slides a bowl into your lap. You eat quickly. It's mostly water and onion. No meat, but warm. And it helps. For a while. You lick the bowl clean and hand it back. The man chuckles. You thank him with a glance. You've learned who to go to, who to beg from without begging. Sometimes the baker's daughter leaves a heel of bread on the sill, never looks at you, but always wipes her hands on her apron right after. You don't ask why, you just take it when she does. Once, you tried to store food for later. A pouch of nuts, wrapped tight, buried behind a chimney. Rats got it. Then a bird. Then someone else. Now you carry everything on your belt. 2 strips of dried meat, 3 hazelnuts, a root that might not be poison. Your hunger makes you careful. You don't let it show. Not too much. Because if people see how thin you're getting, how slow your steps are after dusk, they'll think you're weak. And weak people don't last long. You think of the feasts the nobles throw, silver platters, roasted birds, pies so rich they sag with their own arrogance. You've never been invited to one. You've only ever watched from the roof. Once you stole a honeyed fig from a serving tray on its way through the back corridor of a manor. You still dream about it. Software sweet, like eating a secret. You try not to think about food, but hunger doesn't care about your focus. It curls under your ribs and whispers that you're dying, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. You're not, of course. Not yet. You move too carefully. But it's getting harder. Your steps drag. Your hands tremble when they shouldn't. And your thoughts? They linger longer on bakeries than on blades. You pass a tavern and smell meat. You stop walking, just for a breath. Then you move on. Because your mark is still breathing. And so are you, for now. No one believes you exist. That's the strange thing. You walk through a crowd, mud-soaked boots, shadowed hood, dagger under your ribs, and people part without knowing why. They feel something, a chill, a shift in pressure, but they never name it. You are myth. You're the story whispered over ale when a merchant goes missing. The excuse given when a rival doesn't return from the latrine. You are the threat behind threats. Careful, or the ghost will come for you. The one who walks without sound. The knife in the crowd. And while they laugh, nervously, you pass them. They don't know, they just stood next to the story they're telling. At first, you hated it, this invisibility. You wanted someone to know what you were doing, what you'd survived. You wanted them to say your name, not in fear, just in acknowledgement. But names are dangerous. So you gave yours up. The guild calls you Crow, not because you wear black, not because you caw, but because you watch from high places. Wait. Choose your moment. You didn't choose the name, but it fits. You hear 2 street sellers argue over whether you're real. One swears his cousin's friend saw you vanish into mist. The other claims you can't possibly be one person. Must be a dozen, maybe more. A cult, a curse, a trick played by the Lord Regent to keep people afraid. You smirk. It's helpful in a way. Because while they debate if you're real, you walk past with blood still drying on your boots. It has its downsides, of course. Being myth doesn't pay well, and no one helps a ghost. Once you stumbled into a stable with a split lip and a dislocated shoulder. The girl tending the horses gasped when she saw your blade. then ran. You dragged your own arm back into place. Another time, you tried to sleep in the corner of a tavern. The innkeeper tossed a bucket of water on you. "No corpses here," he muttered. You laughed, stood and left without a word. You're not allowed to be tired, or sick, or human, because people don't believe in you. And if they don't believe in you, they won't mourn you when you're gone. That's part of the deal. You vanish, you reappear, you vanish again. No roots, no record, no kindness. You sometimes wonder if you could disappear for real. Just stop showing up. Walk into the woods, bury the dagger, sleep. But you know how that story ends. Someone would find you. Not because they missed you. Because someone like you is always useful to someone worse. So you keep moving. Another face in the crowd. Another shadow in the mist. Another myth who walks like a man. And no one believes you're real. Which makes you more dangerous than ever. The city is trying to kill you. Not metaphorically. Not in some grand, sweeping, cruel world kind of way. Literally, a chimney brick falls as you pass beneath it. Misses you by half a step. You don't flinch. That's the third time this month. The alley where you usually sleep smells different. Too clean. Someone's wiped the blood from the cobbles. That means it's been used recently. You don't go back. The butcher's boy glares at you as you pass his stall. He's got a cut across his cheek now. You don't know how he got it, but you do know he's been telling stories. Loud ones. And stories have weight. The city doesn't have sharp lines. It sprawls, leans, seeps into itself. Streets turn to tunnels, courtyards collapse into stairwells, roofs link together like puzzle pieces. It breathes, it remembers, and it holds grudges. The cobblers refuse to patch your boots. The tavern you used to sit outside won't even sell you broth. The apothecary's apprentice sees you and locks the door. The people know something. Or they think they do. And that's worse. You cross through the market and feel it, eyes on your back. Not many, just enough, just the kind that follow you 2 steps too long. You duck down a side alley and take a different route, because every inch of this place is dangerous. Not the danger of blades and bounty hunters, though they're here too. It's subtler. A loose shutter that was once a handhold is now bolted shut. A fruit stall you leaned against has moved a foot to the left. The city shifts beneath you, slowly erasing the shortcuts you carved into it. You trip over a route that wasn't there yesterday. You pause. Someone moved the crate near the east gate, the one you used to hop over the wall. It's gone now, just gone. You stare for a beat too long, then move. You pass a fountain where the water tastes wrong. You spit it out. Someone's poisoned it. Or tried to. Historians write about medieval cities like they're marvels, centers of trade, innovation, growth. You know better. Cities are mazes, labyrinths of stone and suspicion. They turn on you. They close in, especially when they know what you are. You brush your fingers against a wall. There was a chalk mark here, a guild symbol. Warning, watch the windows. It's been scraped off. Someone's clearing the signs. You clench your jaw. The city doesn't want you anymore. And that means it's time to either dig in or disappear. But disappearing takes coin, and favors, and time. And you're nearly out of all 3. You duck into a bakery, steal a heel of bread, and vanish before the girl behind the counter can scream. You eat it in 3 bites, dry and crusty. Then you slip into the sewer grate on the corner of Mercy and Lantern. You'll stay below for a few hours, maybe a night. Down there, the city doesn't breathe. It waits. And you try to remember which way the tunnel bends. Because one wrong turn down here, and you're not coming back up. You work for people you hate. Not dislike, not mistrust. Hate. They wear silk gloves and speak in riddles. They sip wine while sending you to crawl through muck. They smile while giving you names, as if the deaths they commission are just clever inconveniences. Chess pieces being removed from a very expensive board. Today's name came from a man with too many rings. One on every finger. His hands looked heavy, like his power was dragging him down by the knuckles. You couldn't look at them without imagining where those rings had been, what coins they'd paid, what throats they'd gripped. He didn't sit when he summoned you. He stood, leaned slightly against a marble column, like the very concept of effort offended him. He called you Knife. Not your name, just the tool. You didn't respond. He told you the target was a minor lord. Minor, he said with disdain, as if even speaking the title sullied him. The lord had apparently spoken too freely. You didn't ask about what. You don't ask questions anymore, because the answers are always the same. Politics, revenge, money, betrayal. And you've stopped pretending it matters. The nobles you work for never see the blade. They never clean the blood. They never see the eyes of the people they've condemned. You do. You remember them. That's the worst part. That smirking man in the garden who laughed right until the moment you plunged a blade under his ribs. The mother who begged you to leave her son alive. The priest who said your name like a prayer before you cut his throat. They stick with you. But the ones who hire you, they don't remember anything except the coin they spent and the silence that followed. You walk through the outer court of the noble district now. Guards nod at you, not because they know who you are, but because you walk like you belong. You pass a man scrubbing a marble step with a ragged brush. His knuckles are bleeding. No one notices. The man with the rings probably owns this whole square, or knows someone who does. You hope his wine sours. You hope his rings pinch, but you'll still take his coin, because it buys bandages, because it buys bread, because even poison has its price. Once, you thought about killing the people who hire you. Just one, just to see what would happen. But the truth is, they don't bleed like your other marks. They're surrounded, shielded. Their words reach farther than your blade ever could. So you bite your tongue. You bow your head. You take the job. And you remind yourself, you're not doing this for them. You're doing it so that when the winter comes and your ribs ache from cold, you can still afford a cloak. You're doing it so the boy who saw you fall off that roof last week doesn't have to be you in 5 years. You're doing it because you don't know how to do anything else. You leave the noble quarter with the parchment in your boot, your teeth clenched, your eyes lowered. You work for people you hate. But you don't work for free. You don't get paid enough for this. That's the quiet truth threaded through every step you take, every lock you pick, every window you crawl through at midnight while your knees scrape on loose mortar. and your breath curls into the dark, like a question no one wants to answer. Your last job earned you 12 silver. 12. After bribes, gear, lodging, and that very necessary bottle of bad wine to drown the face of the man who begged you not to do it, you have 3. 3 silver coins. One's bent. The other 2 have teeth marks, not yours. You jingle the pouch on your hip and try not to curse. People think assassins are rich. Hidden vaults, stashes of stolen jewels, chests beneath floorboards lined with gold and regret. They think you kill one merchant and live like a lord. Those people have never tried to buy a decent pair of boots. Your current ones are stitched together with thread borrowed from a dyer who thought you were mute. You paid her with a fake coin and a lie about your uncle being dead. Both worked. You hope. You enter a tavern. Not because you can afford to eat, but because sometimes sitting in a place where food is being served tricks your stomach into quieting down. The barkeep eyes you. You hold up one coin, waggle it, then point to a stool. He nods. You sit. Water. A crust of bread. That's all you get. You chew slowly. Pretend it's enough. In the corner, a man in a velvet doublet is complaining about how much he paid for a horse. 60 silver, he shouts, as if it's a joke. You grip your bread tighter. You made 60 silver once. You'd killed 3 people that week. One bled out in your arms. Another had his child in the room next door. You used the money to pay off the guards who'd started asking questions, and to buy a thicker cloak. It tore a week later. You finish the bread, slide the coin across the bar, and rise. The barkeep doesn't thank you. He doesn't need to. You won't be back. Outside, the streets are slick again. The rain's picked up, or never stopped. You can't tell anymore. You duck into a doorway, check your blade. Still dull, still yours. The job tonight is risky. More guards, more stairs, more noise. It pays 18 silver, supposedly. You'll see 12 if you're lucky, and you'll spend 9 before sunrise. You remind yourself this is survival. Not wealth, not luxury, not freedom, just the space between empty pockets and an early grave. And some nights, even that feels too expensive. Sleep is just another lie. People think it comes easy when you're exhausted, that if your body is broken down enough, your mind will follow. But you've learned that exhaustion and sleep are different languages. One growls, the other whispers. You lie down after the job. It went badly. Not bleeding out in a stable badly, but close. 2 guards you didn't expect. A door that stuck. A dog that barked once, then twice, then lunged. You got away. You always get away. But you're bruised. Your side aches from where a boot met your ribs. You're pretty sure something cracked. You lay down on the straw in the loft of a cobbler's shed. It's dry, mostly. Smells like leather and old sweat. You shut your eyes. And your brain starts shouting. Not about the pain, not about the guards, about the man's face, the one from tonight. The way he looked at you, not in fear, but confusion, as if he recognized you. He didn't. He couldn't. You've never seen him before. But now his face is etched behind your eyelids. You shift on the straw. Something pokes your spine. A nail? A rib of the floorboards? Doesn't matter. You adjust. You breathe. Still nothing. Sleep doesn't come when you ask it. It comes when it wants to. And lately, it's been cruel. You drift for a moment, then jolt awake. The creak of a board somewhere below. The snap of wood as someone walks outside. You grip your knife. Wait. Nothing. Just your heart, thudding like a drum in an empty hall. You close your eyes again. This time, it's the dream. Always the same. Running. Streets that twist wrong. A voice calling your name. A hand reaching out. You turn. You know the face. You don't know the name. You wake, sweating. The moon is higher. You've slept for an hour. Maybe. You sit up, flex your fingers, check your blade, check your pouch. Still there, still poor, still breathing. You stare at the ceiling. You've stopped calling it insomnia. That sounds too polite. This is a war. Your body wants to sleep. Your mind says, no witnesses. You rub your temples, stretch your arms. Try again. Historians talk about rest in the Middle Ages as if it was simple. Peasants slept from sundown to sunrise. Maybe. But assassins don't live in sunrises. They live between clock ticks, in stolen time and bad dreams. You pull your cloak tighter. The draft through the window's crack cuts like ice. You lie back down. You try again. You always try again. Because if you don't sleep, you'll break. And if you break, no one comes to pick up the pieces. The poison doesn't work the way they told you it would. It never does. There's no clean drop on a wine glass and a silent slump forward. No elegant gasp followed by a graceful fall. No last whispered secret to carry back to the guild. Tonight, it's teeth and convulsions. You crouch in the alley outside the tavern's rear door, watching the man through a cracked window. The vial was slipped into his drink 15 minutes ago, in full view of 2 barmaids, 1 dog and a fiddler too drunk to notice. The man is still sitting upright. He finishes his stew. He laughs. You stare. Then it starts. First, his hand trembles. Then his jaw locks. He grips the edge of the table, breath loud, wrong. Then he screams. It's loud, guttural, a wrenching sound that cuts through the room like a knife in wet cloth. People panic. The table falls. He slams into the ground, back arching. Froth bubbles at his mouth. Someone yells, "Witchcraft!" You curse under your breath. It wasn't supposed to go this way. The poison was marked fast. You bought it from a woman with 7 silver rings and no eyes, who said it would work in 3 swallows. You've counted 5. The man kicks once, twice, then stillness. But the room is chaos now. Everyone's seen. Everyone's afraid. And you're still outside, dagger untouched, wondering if you just turned a quiet job into a citywide scandal. You slip away, fast, back alleys, rooftops, through the fish market, past the dye pits. You reach your safe house with your lungs clawing at your ribs. You sit on the floor and stare at your hands, still shaking, not from guilt, from the memory of how loud it was, how violent. You prefer clean kills, silent, fast, no witnesses, no questions. But poison? Poison never listens. It doesn't care about dignity. It doesn't care about timing. It just does what it does. And sometimes that's messier than a blade ever could be. You wipe your face, drink a mouthful of water that tastes like tin. You remember the stories. A single drop on the tongue. It smells of almonds. You won't feel a thing. All lies. You check your pouch. The second vial is still there, warm from being close to your skin. You hold it up to the firelight. Clear. Innocent looking. You cork it tighter. You'll use your blade next time. Even dull, it's kinder. Every roof has its risks. They seem safe at first. Solid stone, sturdy beams, a quick way over crowded streets. But rooftops don't forgive mistakes. They don't care if you're tired or if your foot's still swollen from your last fall. They only wait, silent, unmoving, ready to break you the moment you stop respecting them. Tonight, the city is quiet. The moon's a sliver. You're crouched above the main square, watching lamplight flicker on shuttered windows. Your mark is due soon. He likes to walk alone after curfew, brave, foolish, or both. You're hoping for foolish. You shift your weight, inching along the edge of the roofline. Tiles clink beneath you, one sliding slightly. You freeze. Wait. No one stirs below. You continue. Then, the bark. Sharp. Startled. Too close. You glance down. Dog. Big. Fast. Its teeth flash in the lamplight, and you see the slack chain dangling from its collar. Someone didn't tie it right. Now it's loose. It barks again. Then it runs, straight for the alley beneath your perch. And then it jumps. It doesn't reach you, but it's close. Close enough that your startled step backward sends one boot slipping on a wet shingle. And then, gravity. You fall, not far. Just enough. You land badly. Hip first. Roll sideways. Scrape your elbow on a chimney edge. You bite your tongue to keep from swearing. The dog's still barking. Louder now. Windows open. Lights flare. You haul yourself upright, ignoring the fresh pain in your ribs, and scramble up a hanging line onto the neighboring roof. You run, bent low, fast, careful. Behind you, someone's shouting. The dog's still making a scene. You don't look back. You leap to another rooftop, clear the alley, roll across the landing, and come to a stop behind a cluster of empty barrels. Silence. You wait. The shouts fade. The barking stops. Your breath comes in hard, shallow pools. You reach up, touch your side. Wet. Not blood, just sweat. You think. You hope. You stay low for a few more minutes, watching for movement. Nothing. You're alone again. You exhale. Rooftops always seemed romantic once. Fast, secretive, clever. But every tile is a betrayal waiting to happen. Every gap is a broken ankle in disguise. And every dog, apparently, is a hound from hell with a grudge against shadows. You pull your hood lower and limp toward the next crossing. You still have a job to do. Even if the city's trying to eat you tile by tile, you've been caught before. Not recently, not since you learned to keep your back to walls and your blade under your tongue. But once, long ago, and you still carry the memory like a scar behind your ribs. You were 19. Too fast, too loud, too confident. You'd gotten sloppy, cut corners, trusted the parchment instead of your gut. The mark had guards, 3 of them. You only knew about one. You got in, barely. slipped past the cook, darted behind a curtain, crept along the baseboard of a manor that smelled like lavender and polished sin. You found the room, found the bed, found the man sleeping like someone with too much power and not enough sense. You leaned close. Then you heard it. A breath, not his, behind you. You turned. Too slow. The first blow knocked the air from your lungs. The second disarmed you. You tried to run. You didn't make it 3 steps. They didn't kill you. Not right away. They wanted information, names, promises. You gave them silence. They locked you in a cellar with no windows, a dirt floor, and one dripping pipe that never stopped. 3 days. You don't remember all of it. You remember the cold, the hunger, the dreams that weren't dreams, just panic with a soundtrack. Once, you saw your own hands covered in moss. Another time, you thought the rats were speaking. You still hate the smell of damp stone. On the 3rd day, someone opened the door. You expected more guards. Instead, it was the guildmaster. She didn't say a word. Just looked at you, tossed a knife into the dirt, and left. You understood. If you wanted out, you'd get yourself out. You did. The guard didn't expect you to fight back. That was his mistake. You still have the scar on your thigh. A reminder of how close you came, of how long it takes to bleed in the dark when no one's listening. Now, every time you walk into a job, you remember that cellar. The dripping, the dark, the way your own name sounded when no one answered. You're not careless anymore. You double-check exits. You don't trust doors. You listen for breaths behind your own. Because getting caught once teaches you something no guild ever could. That no one's coming. Not unless you drag yourself out. You stand now in the shadow of a bell tower, staring up at a window that looks too quiet. Your mark is inside. Asleep, probably. Or pretending. You know how that goes. You reach for your blade. You listen. You move. And in the back of your mind, that cellar is still there. Dripping. Waiting. Just in case. The church wants you dead. It wasn't always that way. Once, you were invisible to them, just another shadow scurrying beneath the gilded ceilings of their sanctuaries, another nameless body in the cathedral square. You passed unnoticed beneath stained glass saints and incense-thick air. Now there are whispers. You hear them in confessionals, when you crouch behind the screen for shelter. You hear them in sermons, when a friar's voice hardens as he speaks of blasphemers in the night, who take what God alone may take. You made the mistake of accepting a job too close to their doors. It was a bishop, not a pious one, a buyer of secrets, a trafficker of stolen lands. He dined on the gold coins he extorted from dying merchants, and the sins of noblemen whispered into his ringed fingers. Your employer swore it was justice. You should have known better. He died with a prayer half formed on his lips, slumped across the velvet of his private chapel. His blood stained the hem of the altar cloth. His guards found nothing, just a flickering candle and a single footprint in wax. Yours. The church never forgets. Within the week, the archbishop declared a plague of unholy violence has befallen the faithful. He sent riders, letters, bounties. One monk carved a likeness of your hooded silhouette into a wooden board and hung it outside the abbey gate. You became a sermon illustration. They say you carry 7 poisons. They say your soul is already burning. You try not to care, but it's harder now. You avoid churches, even for shelter, even for food. The poor boxes used to keep you alive, 3 coppers at a time. Now, even the beggars cross themselves when they see your shadow. Once, a boy outside a monastery threw a stone at you. You didn't flinch. You didn't retaliate. But the look he gave you, of disgust, of certainty, stung more than the stone would have. You hear they're sending a knight, one sworn to the cloth. He's got a name, but you won't use it. You call him the Purifier. He's close. You can feel it. You moved safe houses twice last month, changed your knife grip, started using charcoal instead of ink for letters. You consider leaving the city, but where would you go? The church reaches farther than the streets. It reaches minds. It turns your old allies into candle-waving zealots. It burns your face into glass. It buries you in sermons before you're dead. Tonight, you pass a chapel. The doors are open. A choir sings inside, low, beautiful, tragic. You pause in the shadows. Listen. Then you keep walking. They want your death to be righteous. They want it to look like penance. But you've never been interested in redemption, just escape. And that's getting harder every day. You're not the only blade in town. You knew that, of course. There's always another one. Sometimes older, sometimes younger, sometimes better, usually meaner. Assassins aren't rare, just invisible. You don't advertise. You just show up, do the job, and vanish, and hope the other blade doesn't notice. Lately, you've been noticed. At first, it was the signs. A fresh chalk mark beside one of your safe houses. An unfamiliar symbol, half-crossed. A spool of thread tied to a windowsill where you used to leave messages. Then the letter, folded into the crevice of your favorite hiding wall, written in a hand that looked far too much like yours. It read, "You're slow." That was all. You burned it. The next job didn't go as planned. The mark was gone. Door kicked in, blood already drying, coin purse missing. Someone else got there first. You told yourself it didn't matter, until it happened again. 2 jobs later, another corpse. Wrong blade, wrong timing, but the name matched your parchment. The guild said nothing. They don't care who does the killing, only that it gets done. You started walking with your back to a wall. Started sleeping with one eye open. Started checking your blade twice instead of once. Because now, it's not just the city trying to kill you. It's competition. You catch glimpses sometimes. A shape across a rooftop mirroring yours. A boot print in the mud, same tread as yours, same size. One night, a blade was left stuck in your door. Not a threat, a signature. You left it there until morning. Let the city see it. Let the message spread. You're being hunted by someone who knows your rhythm, your exits, your fear. The worst part, you think you know who it is. Someone from the old days. Someone who passed the same tests. Someone you thought died in that fire 3 winters ago. You were wrong. Now they're back. And they're better than they used to be. Tonight, you take a different route to the square. You climb over unfamiliar roofs. Step where the shingles are still sharp. Breathe through your teeth to keep quiet. You reach the bell tower early. No one's there, but a ribbon is tied to the railing. Red, your color. You grip it hard, then let it go, because this isn't war. Not yet. It's courtship. Two knives circling each other in the dark, waiting to see who blinks first. And in this town, there's only room for one shadow. Your safe house isn't safe anymore. You knew it the second you opened the door. It's the air. Not colder, not disturbed, just wrong, too still. You pause in the threshold, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no breath. But something's changed. The rug is crooked. You never leave it crooked. You step inside carefully, back to the wall, blade drawn low. Your boots make no sound on the warped floorboards. You scan the space. Small, one room, the kind you rent with lies and silence. The bread on the table is missing a corner. You didn't bite it. You crouch by the cot. The edge of the blanket is tucked under, tight, military neat. You sleep like a drunk falling off a rooftop. That fold is someone else's. You step to the window, check the latch. It's open. You never leave it open. Someone was here, and they left it perfect enough that you doubt yourself. If you hadn't spent a decade knowing exactly where every single item in this room belonged. This was a message. You lift the floorboard where you hide your coins. Still there. You lift the one where you keep the letters. Still there. You hesitate. Then lift the one you've never told anyone about, the one with nothing in it, except a carved line in the beam beneath. A new mark. Straight, deep, deliberate. It doesn't say, "I was here." It says, "I can come back." You sit on the edge of the cot. You don't panic. Not yet. But your pulse is a war drum behind your ribs. You don't have many places left. The other safe house burned in the spring. The sewer hatch near the tannery floods now. And you don't sleep outdoors anymore. Not since that night with the black dog and the broken jaw. This room was yours. Your breath, your silence, your heartbeat in the walls. Now, it's just a waiting trap. You pack quickly. Dagger, rope, coin, charcoal, clean shirt, though it still smells like smoke. You sling the bundle over your shoulder and pause one last time. Then you walk out, into the fog, into the cold, into the teeth of the city. You don't look back, because if you do, you'll start to believe in safety again. And that's the deadliest mistake of all. The guild isn't what it used to be. It never sends runners anymore, just birds. Fat, sluggish ravens that leave droppings on your sill and messages that read like riddles. You used to get names. Now you get verses. The man who counts coins beneath the lantern speaks too loud. Or, a noble's cup brims with stolen frost. You're supposed to guess. You never liked games. Back in the old days, when you were younger, hungrier, and less prone to checking behind doors, the guild had form, structure, messages sealed in red wax, assignments delivered by shadow-eyed women with voices like silken knives under their sleeves. You could ask questions. You could even say no. Now, you send a bird. Maybe they respond. Maybe they don't. You don't even know who's left. The hideout beneath the smithy closed last winter. The merchant front on Narrow Street burned. The girl with the limp hasn't been seen since midsummer, and her dagger showed up at a pawn shop last week. You used to meet other blades in back rooms, playing cards in silence or sharpening weapons on a shared whetstone. Now you meet no one. The silence has stretched too long. It's not solitude anymore. It's abandonment. You wonder if the guild is dead and just hasn't realized it yet. Or maybe it's worse. Maybe it lives, but no longer cares. The last letter you sent came back untouched. You burned it. The coin they owe you for 2 completed names still hasn't arrived. You visited the drop point 3 times. Only dust. You're starting to question whether your next assignment will even come. And if it does, if it's another riddle, another ghost to chase, will you take it? You sit on the rooftop of an abandoned bathhouse, legs stretched over the ledge, eating half an onion like an apple. You haven't tasted anything better in days. The city below moves without you. Bells toll, children run. A drunk stumbles past the courtyard gate. No one sent for you. No one's watching. You think about leaving. Not disappearing, just walking away. What does the guild mean if it doesn't protect its own? If there's no one waiting when the job's done, no fire, no handshake, no nod, just another name crossed off by a hand that won't be remembered. You wipe your blade on your cloak. The edge is dull again. You'll sharpen it later, maybe. Because even if the guild forgets you, the city won't. And someone else is always watching. You try not to care. That's what they told you, back when you still asked questions, when you still wondered who these people were, these names you whispered before pressing your blade into their ribs. Don't care, they said. It makes you slow. So you learned how not to. You counted coin instead of birthdays. You memorized escape routes instead of prayers. You practiced detachment the way others practiced swordplay, hour by hour, until it lived in your bones. And it worked. For a while. You stopped remembering faces. You stopped hesitating. You became the blade they wanted you to be. But lately, it's getting harder. Not because the work has changed, but because you have. You still move like a ghost. Still slip through windows, vanish into crowds, but the silence afterward? It lingers, longer than it should. You hear the echo of footsteps long after they've stopped. You dream of eyes, always open, always watching. Tonight, you sit in an attic above the old dye merchant's shop. You're supposed to be preparing. You know the mark, the route, the hour. You've been watching him for days. But your hands won't stop shaking. You clench your fists. Focus. He's a smuggler. He deals in stolen goods, poisons, maybe worse. The city will be cleaner without him. That's what the parchment said. That's what the coin says. You tell yourself it doesn't matter if it's true. You lie to yourself because that's what keeps the knife steady. But there's a drawing on the man's desk. A child's, maybe. A rough crayon of a house, a sun, a tall figure with square shoulders. Labeled P.A. You saw it through the window yesterday. And now it's in your head. You don't want it there. You don't want to know he hums while he walks, or that he feeds the pigeons before dawn, or that he writes with his left hand. Because every detail makes him real, and real people are harder to kill. You remind yourself, this is a job, not justice, not mercy, not vengeance, just coin. You repeat it like a prayer, not to God, to yourself. Because if you start to care, if you let the cracks widen, it'll all come pouring out. The faces, the begging, the children, the ones who didn't scream, the ones who did. You can't let it in. Not if you want to keep doing this. Not if you want to survive. You grip the blade in your lap. Run your thumb along the dull side. It feels heavier tonight. You breathe. In. Outside. Detach. You are not a person. You are a task. You are a shadow with orders. And you do not care. Not tonight. You're starting to care anyway. You don't mean to. You try not to. But it happens. You watch the mark through the broken slats of a barn wall, crouched in straw that smells like wet dog and rust. You've followed him for a week now. Learned his gait, his habits, his tells. You should be ready. You should have already done it. But you haven't. Because yesterday he bought a toy, a small one, wooden, a horse on wheels, the kind with a string so it can follow a child through dirt and puddles. You saw him wrap it in cloth and tuck it under his coat. Today, you saw who it was for. A girl, maybe 5. Dark curls, dirt-smudged knees, eyes too large for her face. She ran to him as he came down the alley, and he knelt in the mud to catch her. You watched him give her the toy. You saw the smile, hers, then his. And something in you pulled back. You've killed fathers before. You've ended stories in the middle, scattered families like ashes. It never mattered. The names were names. The faces were details. But this one is still breathing because your fingers won't tighten, because you're tired, because maybe, just maybe, you want someone to live. You're not supposed to want that. You try to rationalize. Maybe the parchment was wrong. Maybe the coin came from the wrong purse. Maybe he's innocent. But you know better. He's not innocent. You saw him exchange a pouch of powder behind the granary. You saw him hand a blade to a man who smelled like blood. You know what he's done. And yet, you crouch in the straw and feel your blade like a curse at your side. The girl is singing, a nonsense tune made of made-up words. You can't hear the melody, only the rhythm. It makes your chest hurt. You retreat before they see you. You don't kill him. Not today. You go back to your safe house, one you haven't used in months. You light a candle, stare at the flickering shape of your own shadow against the wall. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be hesitating. You shouldn't be wondering who'll feed the girl tomorrow if you do what you're paid for. But you are. You tell yourself it's a mistake, a momentary lapse, hunger, fatigue. You tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow. You lie, because part of you wants to see that girl smile again, and you're not sure what that makes you. You try to leave, not just the city, the life. You pack light. 1 blade, 1 coin pouch, a water skin, a rough map of the northern roads. You wrap it all in your spare cloak, tie it to your back, and step out into the fog before the bells chime prime. No one stops you. The gates are open early. Some trade nonsense with the port you didn't ask, and you slip through like smoke through a crack in stone. You keep walking, past the last wall, past the last watchtower, onto the road that stretches out like a thin gray thread across the hills. Freedom. You think that's what this is. You reach the trees by dusk. There's a brook, a fallen log, birds you don't recognize. The silence tastes different here, less like secrecy, more like solitude. You sit. You eat a crust of bread you took from a tavern 2 nights ago. You watch the sun go down, and for a moment it feels possible. But it doesn't last. Sleep is no better out here. The wind finds your ribs through the holes in your cloak. The howls in the distance aren't wolves, not quite. And in your dreams, you're still in the city, still on the rooftops, still standing over someone whose name you barely read before it vanished into red. You wake before dawn. Your back aches. Your fingers twitch like they're reaching for a dagger. You drink from the brook. You stare down the road. Then you turn around. Not because you were chased, not because you were summoned, because the silence feels heavier than the shadows ever did, because your hands don't know how to be empty, because somewhere out there in the city is a girl with a toy horse and a man who still breathes because you hesitated, because you don't know who you are out here. But in there, in the stone and filth and whispers, you do. You're not proud of it, but it's real. And so you walk back, one slow step at a time. The city takes shape again on the horizon by midday. The spires, the smoke, the bells. You hear them ring and feel your shoulders settle into their old weight. You slide back into the alleys without a sound. No one notices you return. That's how you know you belong. You come back, not in a blaze, not in a flash of vengeance or redemption, just quietly, through the old gate near the tannery, where the guards nap through their shifts and no one checks faces unless they're bleeding. The city doesn't cheer your return. It doesn't even notice, but it feels different now, like a glove sliding back over your hand, familiar in every crack and stench and creak of timber underfoot. You move like you never left. The rooftops still tilt the same way. The courtyards still echo with the same dog barks and merchant calls. The streets still know your step, even if your bones protest a little more than they used to. You visit the fountain first, the one in the square with the chipped angel and the rusted pipe. You sit on the edge, pull your hood low, and watch. That's all you do for hours. Watch. There are new faces in old places, new scams, new vendors, new marks. But underneath, the rhythm is the same. Hunger, hustle, hurry. It never changes. You hear a name whispered near the bread stall. Not yours, not quite, but close. They're still talking about you. You should be angry. Instead, you feel nothing. The guild hasn't contacted you. No birds, no riddles, no ink-splattered parchment under your door. You don't know if that means they've forgotten you, or if they're watching to see what you'll do next. So you do what you know. You work. Small jobs at first. A note delivered to a locked door. A watch stolen from a belt too tight. A rumor silenced with the right whisper at the right time. Then the bigger jobs come. A merchant in debt. A blackmailer. A would-be poisoner who misjudged his own medicine. You don't flinch. You don't dream. Not often, but the faces return sometimes. The girl with the toy, the priest with the cracked voice, the guard who begged you to let him see his daughter one more time. You let him. you never saw him again. That's what it means to come back. You don't pick up where you left off. You carve your place again, one shadow at a time. You learn the new routes, the new bribes, the new hands in the old pockets. You stop waiting for the guild to reach out, and you start building something else, something quieter. The runners know where to find you now. A burned-out apothecary, a boarded cellar door, a coin dropped behind the left statue in the ruined chapel. You take only what you choose, because now you're not just a blade for hire. You're a blade with memory. And you've come back sharp. You finish the list, not because you want to, because there's no one else left to do it. You spread the last 5 names out across your table, crumpled parchment, stained with sweat and soot, each one carefully penned in that familiar hand. You read them aloud, softly, like a bedtime story for someone who stopped sleeping years ago. You've done so many of these, but these are the last. You tell yourself that. The first is easy, a courier with loose lips. He dies in an alley with a sigh, barely a whisper. You close his eyes. The second is harder, an apothecary who's been brewing poisons for the wrong people. She sees you coming, offers you tea. You refuse. She nods, says, "I knew it would be you." You don't ask how. The third fights. Of course he does. A former guard, strong, angry. He swings an axe, cracks your shoulder. You leave him in the rain, bleeding into the gutter. The fourth is already dead when you arrive. A note pinned to his chest. Too slow, Crow. You clench your jaw. You know who did it. You don't like that it stings. Then the last. You wait outside her house for hours. She's a noble's scribe. Thin hands, bent spine. She never notices you, but you notice the painting inside her window. A tiny thing, a house, a stream, a dark figure hunched in a doorway. She painted it. You recognize yourself in the brush strokes. You leave. No blade, no message, no name crossed off. Some lists don't need to be finished. You return to your hideout and sit with the last parchment in your lap. You fold it, slide it into the fire, watch the edges curl and blacken until all that remains is ash. You stare at your hands. They don't shake, not anymore. The guild is gone. The city doesn't care. But you? You're still breathing, still moving, still here. And for the first time in years, there's nothing left to do, just silence. And the long exhale of something ending. You hang up the blade. There's no ceremony, no ritual, just you, alone, in a quiet room above a shuttered shop where no one looks up. The blade rests on the table, clean, sharp, polished one last time out of habit. You stare at it. The handle is worn smooth. The point curves slightly to the left now. Battle damage you never repaired. The edge reflects the firelight like it still wants to be used. But you're done. You told yourself that 100 times. This time, you mean it. You slide the dagger into a small box. Not locked, just closed. You wrap it in cloth, an old bit of your first cloak, frayed but familiar. You place it beside the satchel of names you never crossed off. Then you walk away. The room you live in now is smaller than the old safe houses. A single bed, a chipped basin, a shelf with 3 books you haven't read, a stool. It's enough. You spend your days quietly, carrying water, helping the old woman in the apothecary mix poultices. She knows who you are. She never asks. She lets you grind herbs in silence. Some days she gives you soup. Some days you speak 3 words. It's more than you thought you'd have. At night, you sit by the window and listen. The city still breathes. People still vanish. You don't follow. You've had offers. Of course you have. An envelope under the door. A coin in a bottle. A child with a message in her sleeve. You say no. Not loudly. Just quietly enough that they stop asking. You still dream sometimes. Of rooftops. Of bells. Of eyes that never close. But you wake up without reaching for the blade. That feels like progress. One morning, a boy asks your name. You pause. Then give him your real one. He nods, runs off, leaves you standing in the sun with your hands in your pockets and a strange tightness behind your ribs. You sit, you breathe, you remember, and you let it be. Because in the end, you weren't a legend. You were just a person, a tired one, but alive. And in this city, that's rare enough to be worth something. The fire is soft now, just embers curling in the grate, warm enough to paint shadows on the floor and soften the lines of your face. The dagger is gone. The names are gone. All that remains is this quiet room, the hush of distant wind, and the gentle hum of a world that no longer calls your name. You stretch your legs, lean back against the wooden wall, and listen. No footsteps, no knocking, no orders scribbled in ink. Just the sound of your own breath, steady, slow, like the tide slipping in under moonlight. There is no rush now, no rooftops to leap, no corners to check, no faces to forget. Just stillness. Outside, the city settles into itself, wrapping its streets in fog and its bells in velvet silence. The work continues without you. The shadows shift without your hands. And you let them. Because you've done enough. The weight you carried, blade, names, memory, has been set down. Not erased, but released. You close your eyes. Let the rhythm of sleep approach, not as a threat or a thief, but as a guest you've been waiting for. Let your muscles loosen. Let the stories slip away. Let the faces blur into dust and candlelight. You made it through, not unbroken, but here. And now there's rest, not the sleep of the hunted, but the kind that finds you after the last chapter closes and the last breath of night drifts through the window. So sleep, Shadow Walker. You've stepped out of the dark, and morning